American inaugural address my take on it was that it had more of a vibe of a State of the Union address than an inaugural address, I think in part because it was indoors. And that made it sort of feel like he was addressing a joint session of Congress, even though he wasn't, even though this was an inaugural address. President Trump spoke in his sort of trademark low monotone, gave his list of grievances. Among his grievances this time was an assertion that there was not even a token effort made to fight the Los Angeles fires, which was a very unusual assertion. If this inaugural address is remembered, I think, as a signal of what's to come, it may be the part where he said, "We're taking it back," when talking about the Panama Canal. He pledged to be a president of peace and to not start any new wars, but did also pledge to forcibly take another country's territory. While President Trump was speaking, a relatively large group of Proud Boys, the pro-Trump armed paramilitary group, marched in full colors in their trademark black and gold in downtown Washington to the Capital One Arena. Just before the inaugural address, just before the swearing in, outgoing President Biden issued pardons to members of his family, noting that while they had done nothing wrong, he believed the threats and promises of politicized persecution of people who the new president has decided are his enemies warranted what President Biden would have otherwise never considered doing.
You know, I can't wrap my mind around why they're hemorrhaging viewers. But why on earth would MSNBC's ratings be collapsing the way they are? They've lost half their audience since November 5th. Why, when you can tune into such profoundly insightful analysis like that from Mark Cuban, no less? I mean, come on, man. Those were some golden insights. I mean, that was some fascinating stuff. Sounded like a State of the Union address because it was inside. Sounded like it was an address that you would deliver inside. What can I say? I mean, the liberal media is officially melting down. They're going through a cataclysmic existential crisis as they see their entire world being dismantled more and more every hour of every passing day. And it hasn't even been a week yet. I mean, think about it. Think about where we were last week at this time. It wasn't exactly a week ago. It was 8 days ago that Biden was delivering his dithering farewell address. That was just days ago. Just think how much the world has changed in a mere matter of days. And in many respects, Trump hasn't even gotten started yet. And so it's obvious the legacy media is in a full-blown nervous freaking breakdown right now, watching their woke world that they and bumbling Biden worked so hard to bring about collapse right before their very eyes. And we got some awesome highlights of these temper tantrums. Here is one of my favorites. Here is Congressman Tim Burchett ending the career of Jim Acosta of CNN on live TV. Check this out.
The White House covering the first Trump administration when they had rioting outside of the White House. I mean, that was covered on CNN. What you're saying, this is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim. Look, I left the White House during a riot. My life was threatened. My life has been threatened within the last few weeks, yet there's no coverage of that. And you all continue this narrative attacking Trump. You just can't stand the fact that he won and that America spoke.
Congressman,
and that your view is very diminished.
That's not the case at all.
And your view is very diminished.
Your view is very diminished. So diminished that more people are watching the Cartoon Network and SpongeBob reruns than you, Jim. That was it. That's the one that hit me the most. SpongeBob freaking reruns. And he's not lying. That's not even remotely an exaggeration. In fact, you're going to love this. Fox News, you know, that news network that are also accused of peddling fake news. Fox News report on the fact that CNN viewership actually drops 30% whenever Jim Acosta is on air. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. At the time of the news story, when did this come out? I think this came out in 2021, 2022. CNN was averaging 1.1 million viewers on Saturdays. By the way, they would beg to have that many viewers on a Saturday today. But regardless, even back then, when they were averaging 1.1 million views on a Saturday, whenever Acosta's program came on over the weekend, that number dropped by 30%. He was barely getting 700,000 views. I can't even imagine what it is now, since it's dropped 90% since the time that Fox covered this story. So CNN actually loses whatever little audience they have whenever this guy Acosta shows up with a smug little face on screen. So it's no wonder that CNN is this week. How's that for irony? This week, CNN is laying off hundreds of workers. These layoffs are coming as CNN is absolutely struggling with their ratings, basically running on fumes at this point. The little money they get from cable subscriptions, they're a disaster in terms of the key demographic for advertisers, the 18 to 34 demographic. I mean, disaster doesn't even really begin to describe it. Oh, and I should say about that notion that CNN is all about the real news. We only do news here on CNN. Take a look at this.
Not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth. It's an alarming choice for a man who has often struggled to unequivocally denounce white supremacists. You recall these moments.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Those words have power. They have meaning. And when Donald Trump speaks, the world listens. Neo-Nazis and white supremacists certainly listen. So why can't he denounce them? Why can't he reject their support?
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
What's your response to Donald Trump saying she should be fired, that Liz Cheney should be fired upon? He keeps speaking in these very extreme terms about the potential dangers to the country if he doesn't win in November. He's used words like bloodbath.
I mean, this is what is so inescapable for the legacy media. They are fake news. They are misinformation. I mean, we could go on and on. Think about it. They told us that Trump colluded with Russia. They told us Vladimir Putin stole the 2016 election. They pushed Hillary Clinton election interference. They told us that Jussie Smollett was the victim of a race crime. They told us that Brett Kavanaugh was a rapist, that the COVID lab leak theory was some nutty conspiracy theory. They told us border agents on horseback ran around whipping migrants, that the Covington Catholic school kids mocked and ridiculed a poor, maligned, peaceful Native American simply banging on his drum mat and minding his own business, that Trump had built cages for migrant kids and recommended that people drink bleach to cure COVID, that Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist, and of course, the granddaddy of them all, that the Hunter Biden laptop was nothing more than Russian disinformation. Yeah, that was CNN. That was MSNBC. That was the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, all of them. The legacy media is fake news. They push narrative, not news. All of their so-called news is always manipulated to fit within a far-left, woke Democrat narrative. Here is the ultra-repulsive Ana Navarro on The View. She even took poor old Snoop Dogg to task, right? The rap star Snoop Dogg, he was DJing one of Trump's balls across D.C., and here is what this borderline illiterate on The View had to say about that.
The thing that really, I think, was spotlighting Snoop is because of the things that Snoop Dogg said 10 days before the inaugural in 2017. And so look, if you opposed and stood up against Trump in 2017, but you were there now, if you spoke up against Trump January 7th, 2021, but you were there now applauding him like a trained seal, Donald Trump has not changed. You've changed.
Yeah. Speaking of trained seals, now what's so hilarious here is that it doesn't even occur to a tiny little brain that people have changed their opinion about Trump because they stopped believing, frankly, all the bullshit that clowns like Ana Navarro peddle on a daily basis to their dwindling audience of their own clapping seals. That's the testimony that you hear time and time again from all the people that have joined the Trump train over the last year, like Nicole Shanahan, right? RFK's former VP. She came out and bluntly said, I stopped believing the bullshit. The very bullshit that Ana Navarro and all the illiterates at The View peddle every single day. And then, not to be outdone, PBS, as you all know, I'm sure by now, they actually pushed the utter absurdity that Elon Musk made a Nazi salute at a Trump rally. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, look, it obviously didn't take long to amass the exact same gesture made by liberal icons over the years. I mean, even, you take a look at that. I forget who it was who said it. Somebody put up a post that said, X is where the legacy media's lies go to die. And I think that's pretty good. Even the woke darling Taylor Swift was found to have joined the Nazi cult, as it were. Oh, no, there it is. Taylor, too. Oh, Taylor. Oh, what's this world coming to? Now, what's so sad here with this PBS nonsense is how it demonstrates how utterly bankrupt their thinking has become. And again, I'm not being hyperbolic here. We were just talking on yesterday's video about how the woke mind virus kills the moral imagination, particularly creativity. It stifles the imagination and kills creativity, and it kills creativity because wokeness is inherently censorious. So by its nature, it censors and prohibits certain forms of thought. So again, this is what Jordan Peterson has long argued in relation to freedom of speech, right? So his concern is freedom of speech is inextricably linked to freedom of thought. Freedom of speech is inextricably linked to freedom of thought. There's essentially no difference between speech and thought, precisely because so much of our thought is organized verbally. And this is so profound because it's not merely the notion that what we think is expressed in words, but rather we actually think in terms of words. Words constitute our thoughts. We're always asking ourselves questions all the time. And we do so to actually get answers from our own consciences. And so if that's true, then what woke cancel culture has actually been trying to do in the relentless stifling of our speech is that they're actually trying to stifle our thoughts. That's why we call it the woke mind virus, right? It's the woke mind virus because all of the attempts to silence free speech are ultimately attempts at silencing what Orwell would call wrongthink. And the irony here with what we're seeing in this dribble from PBS as well as all the other mindless woke legacy media outlets is that the only thought that has been demonstrably stifled and impeded is their own. They're absolutely incapable of thinking beyond a few demeaning tropes designed to dismiss rather than discuss or dialogue with ideas their woke sentiments find offensive. So the only thinking that has been demonstrably diminished is their own. Speaking of, here is Jen Circleback Psaki of MSNBC, still trying to discover for herself the otherwise common practice of making sense.
We're not living in normal times, as we've been discussing for 3 hours, but I think it's important to remind everybody that in normal times, the inaugural address is actually not political at all. I mean, it is the result of a political outcome of an election, but it is typically a president of either party discussing where the country is now and where it needs to go moving forward. It doesn't mean you're not discussing challenges. That's a part of it. You're discussing opportunities. But what struck me about this address was it was not just politicized. It was very personal. And there were a couple of things that I highlighted for myself. I mean, when he said, I've been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. I think we would all disagree with that characterization, with this worth discussing. I was saved by God to make America great again. Never again will immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. Typically, a president is not discussing themselves, even though they won. The country elected them. They are discussing the country they are about to govern. And that struck me. The last thing I would say, just to build off of what Nicole said, is, of course, there are always crises going on in the country. The border is broken. It has been broken for some time. But border apprehensions are down. He talked about crime. Crime in major cities is down. He also talked about oil production. The climate is in crisis. Meanwhile, the country, the United States, produced the largest amount of crude oil than any other country in the world last year. So that also struck me as him projecting upon us crises that are maybe not the right definition of the crises we're actually facing.
Ooh, that's Jen getting a little political there, don't you think? So that's Jen Psaki claiming that inaugural addresses are not supposed to be political, even though they bookmark the peaceful transference of political power as a result of a political election between two political parties. And then she went on to politically critique a speech that wasn't supposed to have anything to do with politics. So she denounced the political nature of the speech while politically critiquing it. I guess we'll just have to circle back on that one. Let's go back to CNN. We just got a couple more here. Here's Jake Tapper freaking out over how big tech is now kissing the ring of Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, if I could just, before I throw it to Anderson, just bring back that photograph of the tech bros inside St. John's Church. It's just one other thing I want to show. So we see Mark Zuckerberg on the left there with the curly hair, CEO of Meta. Tim Cook, his face is blocked, but he has the white hair, CEO of Apple. Jeff Bezos on the right there, the bald gentleman looking to his right, CEO of Amazon. The gentleman behind Mark Zuckerberg is Sundar Pichai. He's the CEO of Google. And Anderson, between those four people, plus Elon Musk from Twitter or X, those five people that I just mentioned, the four in the photograph and also Elon Musk, control so much of the information that we receive. So much is in their hands when it comes to ascertaining, monitoring, or refusing to monitor what is real, what is not real. And we're about to enter an era of deep fakes and all sorts of misinformation. And the degree to which those five gentlemen play a role or do not play a role will be pivotal in terms of where the American people are 4 years from now, in terms of understanding what is true and what is false.
You're also you said we, you're not just talking about we, the United States. You're talking about the world. Mm-hmm. All human beings on the planet. They control access to information. They're the gatekeepers in many ways to information for the entire planet. Van, you had some thoughts seeing that picture of all of them.
Look, I mean.
Yeah, how is that any different on 11 a.m. Monday morning? I mean, isn't it interesting? You'll notice that there was no comparable concern when these same big tech oligarchs were bending over backwards to appease the Biden administration and the FBI. Isn't that interesting? Jake Tapper didn't so much as bat an eye when big tech was colluding with the deep state to suppress breaking stories like the Hunter Biden laptop back in October 2020. And that's probably because CNN was a co-participant in that collusion. I mean, it's so fascinating how totally incapable these legacy media pundits are of reading the room, of discerning the times, as it were. He's right. We are entering into an era of what's known as big data, data that was once controlled and monopolized by the legacy media industry is being replaced with big data, which involves a radically decentralized and democratized process of data dissemination that completely bypasses the control of the legacy media. And while this world of big data has its own problems, for sure, there's no putting the genie back into the bottle. I mean, Jake Tapper can whine and complain and bellyache about it all he wants. Big data is only going to grow. And and as he rightly noted, its growth spans the entire planet. The days of CNN or MSNBC controlling the news narrative are over. They can no more control what's news today than the old post office can control what's communicative. Here's one more from CNN. This is a CNN Democrat trying to come up with a coherent explanation as to why Biden's pardons aren't as bad as Trump's.
I think we should to separate the pardons that are happening today. So the reason why Joe Biden pardoned the January 6th committee and other Milley and Fauci is because Donald Trump, you're right, he ran and people elected him. He said he was going to seek retribution. Now, retribution is not a part of the Constitution, right? So we put those in place. I think it's unfortunate that he pardoned his family today. I am a Democrat. I think that it does cloud what he did so I think you should bifurcate those two. And then I think the pardons for January 6th are completely different. The reason why today feels so abnormal is because of what happened last year or 4 years ago on January 6th, something that none of us in our lifetime have ever seen. So on your day one, when you talked about, not you, Sir Michael, but Donald Trump talks about lowering the cost of eggs, what you do is you let people out who undermined our Constitution, who undermined the election, who undermined people who felt like their life was not better under Donald Trump in 2020. They felt like they wanted a different 4 years, and that's why they elected Joe Biden. So I want to put those pardons in separate buckets, and I think we should be talking about them differently because they are not all pardons are not created equal, in my opinion.
All pardons are not created equal. So there you have it. Biden's pardons aren't as bad as Trump's pardons because Trump is bad. Biden had to pardon his family. Forget the fact that they're as crooked as the day is long. Just ask any lawyer here in Wilmington, Delaware. The stories I've heard, guy, they will just, well, anyway, forget the fact that Biden basically just covered up for his crime family. Nope. Trump promised retribution, and retribution, as we all know, isn't in the Constitution. But covering up for your crime family apparently is. Well, when all is said and done, gang, their days are over. The world is passing the legacy media by, like we talk about constantly on this channel. We're entering into what's called a new techno-populist age, where internet technologies are emancipating us from dependence on the old liberal industries like the legacy media, an emancipation which in turn is ushering in a new politics, a populist politics that's quickly leaving the old, outdated, liberal legacy media far, far behind. And we often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life. And one crucial aspect of that is your routine. Staying strong physically, mentally. It's not just about living longer. It's about living better, which starts with a good night's sleep. Now, I've partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. Now, I've been using Beam Dream every single night for a while now, and it has completely changed the way I sleep. The endless news cycles, the uncertainty about our future, the weight of it all. I gotta be honest, it gets to me. It left me tossing and turning for hours. I have a very hard time turning my brain off. But gang, seriously, I'm not kidding you. Since taking Dream, I literally crash at night. I fall asleep so fast, and I sleep deeply and soundly all throughout the night. Beam Dream is made with the highest quality sleep promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get that deep sleep we all need and deserve. In fact, it's become a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to each and every day. If I may make a suggestion, I love their brownie batter flavor. You got to try it with a little cream in there. It's beautiful. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I wake up feeling rested and ready to give my all, making a huge difference in how I show up every single day. Right now, you can save up to 35% off with my exclusive Beam discount. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code TURLEY at checkout. It's time to stop letting sleepless nights hold you back. Transform your sleep and your day with Dream, because you deserve it. Gang, click on that link or scan that QR code right now. Hey, gang, over the last 4 years in particular, many of us have been rather, we've been feeling rather despondent as we've together just watched our society erode all around us. It was like we were watching one form of social deterioration stack on top of another. Rising rates of divorce, gender confusion, rampant moral relativism. Families have been torn apart. Children are growing up without eternal guiding principles, and the very essence of society has been at stake. In the past several years, tradition, morality, the very family unit itself, they've all been under constant, relentless assault from the far left. But then enter Donald J. Trump, who ran on restoring these foundational elements of our society and bringing back sanity and common sense to America. And the wonderful news is that we, the people, recognize that these alarming trends threaten the foundation of our communities, our way of life, indeed our civilization itself. The people have spoken. Trump's massive victory gave a clear cultural mandate that emphasized that we are sick and tired of any and all woke nonsense and the breakdown of our society. True to his campaign promises, Trump has already issued executive orders slashing DEI, and one that stated unequivocally that our federal government recognizes only 2 genders. Now, despite the amazing progress that Donald Trump is making on restoring sanity at the top-down level, at the executive level, there's still a lot of bottom-up cultural work to be done to truly shift the nation's morality. The consequences of the assault on family values over the past several decades are far-reaching. Our children are navigating a world rife with confusion and chaos, devoid of traditional morals. So what can we do to help restore the indispensable foundational pillars of faith, family, and freedom? Well, joining me today is author Tilly Dillehay. Tilly's a pastor's wife and homeschooling mother of 4 in the smallest county of Tennessee, and her newest book, My Dear Hemlock, provides an imaginative twist to the screw tape letters by C.S. Lewis. So if you're a C.S. Lewis fan, Tilly's latest book is for you. Tilly, welcome. Great to have you here.
Great to be with you.
That's an honor. So you've written, I know, for a number of online publications that are on the front lines of the so-called culture wars, as it were. What do you see as the primary factors driving the erosion of traditional values in our culture today?
Well, I think it's been several generations of a loss of just a true Christian ethic, and the downstream things that we enjoy. And I think we were enjoying as kind of leftovers of the Christian ethic. In my childhood, we were still enjoying those things. But I do think even in my childhood, those things were just downstream. And I think we were just, I was seeing families, the divorce rates were rising even when I was a kid. That was becoming a normal thing. And obviously now my children are watching a different level of attack on marriage and family. But I think it's been a mistake for the church for a long time to think that we can take back the family without taking back piety I know that's kind of a strange word for this conversation, but I do think that that's really where this began. There was not a commitment to the private Christian ethic, the private holiness among men and women, the marriage habits that were quiet, that arise in the kitchen and in the living room and in the bedroom. You know, the household ethics were lost first, I think.
Yeah.
And so obviously, you know, we were experiencing those things even when I was a kid, and when our TV shows were already eroding manhood and womanhood even back then in a way that maybe was more subtle. So now obviously we have a full out war on what even is a woman and what even is a man, what even is a family, what even is a child.
Right.
But the seeds have been in place for many generations, I think. So
I like how you put it. When we were growing up, we were living more off of like a borrowed capital from Christendom, the centuries of the century-long foundations of Christendom, and then they just quickly eroded. I love the term piety. You know, I came across when I was doing some studies that scholars use this term cosmic piety to describe like the ancient mindset or the medieval mindset. And it's the notion is that everyone, it didn't matter who you were, and really literally all over the world, there was this ubiquitous belief that the world was filled with divine meaning and purpose, and therefore every person born into the world was born into a divine obligation to conform our lives into a harmonious relationship with that divine meaning and purpose. And the institutions that facilitated that harmonious relationship were things like family and community and faith traditions, and you know, you could go back to monarchy or whatever it is, but it seems like those institutions have broken down precisely because, as you've identified, piety, that sense of obligation to conform our lives to something greater than ourselves has broken down. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, and there's so many things built into that, because the sense of obligation, that means that your obligation is first and foremost to God who created you, and that's lost. But then from there you have all these other, you know, your obligation to your parents to honor them, to follow in their footsteps if they, you know, if they gave you something good, to actually pursue it. Your obligation to your husband or your wife or your children. So just the sense of obligation was a huge loss when we lost that, when we decided our only obligation is to the self. To make sure that I am happy, that I am fulfilled, and that's my only responsibility in this life.
Yeah, and that's the heart of secular liberalism, that your only obligation is to yourself. And then I heard somebody define identity politics, ironically, as the self kind of magnified into a group. And so this group now has the same kind of autonomous, you know, some same kind of autonomous relationship that has no relationship to nation, culture, custom, tradition, nothing. It's and then we must acquiesce to that sovereign individual writ large, as it were. In your view, I mean, again, you've done a lot of thinking on this. In what ways has the breakdown of the family unit in particular contributed to the moral and social challenges as we're facing today as a society? Maybe a little nutshell. I mean, we could write a big book. Thick books have been written on that, but
yeah. Well, we're living in a world of widows and orphans. Wow. So when you lose your family, that means you lose your father. Wow. And when you lose your father, you're an orphan. So if we're all widows and orphans, then we don't even know what health looks like. We don't know what safety feels like. We don't know what love looks like and feels like, because many of us haven't even seen those things. So I think when I'm talking to or listening to a woman who's really in the kind of feminism has kind of got her by the throat, and she's arguing for things that she doesn't understand really. I think I tend to just look at her and think, if you don't know what a man is like when he's a godly man, I wouldn't trust him either.
Right.
I
Right.
wouldn't trust him. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him,
Right.
So there's an emotional element to this that you cannot overstate. When you've never experienced fatherhood as it was meant to be, you can't understand what a healthy society is. So you're an orphan for life, and you can learn those things. And I see people doing that. I see fatherless men learning how to be men. I see fatherless women learning what these relationships can be like when they're whole and when they're operating the way they're supposed to operate. But there's always a part of you that's orphaned. You have to go against the grain.
I love that. You're reminding us there's a very real, genuine woundedness behind wokeness.
Yes.
And that does explain the propensity and inclination, disposition towards anger and destruction.
That's right.
Right.
If my life is torn up, everything else should be torn up. You know.
Yeah.
And I remember this, as a young person, I was raised in kind of a Christian bubble, more or less. But I remember as a young adult, when I started working in a restaurant, and I think maybe for some reason, 70 or 80% of the other waiters and waitresses at this restaurant were gay and lesbian young men and women, young people. And so it was my first kind of exposure to this culture and to these people, and listening to them talk, and how in the first 3 minutes of a conversation with these people, first of all, they're going to tell you their sexual orientation, which is so funny. Like, it's just right up there at the surface. One of the first things that they're going to want to tell you about themselves, but they'll tell you about their fathers. And it just seemed like it was such it was like right at the tip of their throat, this woundedness that was ready to come out the minute they're going to tell you anything about themselves. They're so defined by this fatherlessness.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to me how just emotionally stunted they tended to be. And so just you have to have compassion when you're you're talking to them, just the place that they're coming from. So
yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, when we get asked questions about that all the time, of how do I talk to a family member or so forth, who's in this lifestyle, one of the things I always tell them is, look, you want to value relationship more than being right. We know you're right. You got your truth, but focus on the relationship first, because obviously there's some real wounds behind that, and focus on that first. Then you can work on, over time, trying to recalibrate the thinking. The relationship, it starts with the relationship first. I love that. What practical steps can families and communities take to restore hope and provide stability for the next generation?
If we don't know how to run our own families and how to be in a healthy relationship that is functional with our own spouses, then we have no business trying to fix anything. There's nothing that you can fix if you can't maintain the core of that family unit, which is that husband and that wife who are tending to their spiritual health, confessing sin to one another, keeping short accounts, a man who has a purpose and a woman who is following him in that purpose, who is excited about whatever his calling is, whatever road he's on, she's on it with him. That's the starting place. And then you have this aroma that builds up in a home that is a lovely aroma. I was actually saved in a home like that. I was visiting and counseling with a pastor in a healthy, normal family home that was out here in the middle of nowhere. There was nobody cool. There was nothing fancy happening in this home. It was just a healthy aroma that I was so ready for. So I have a huge belief in the power of individual healthy families being the agent of change in the wider culture, because I've seen it.
Yeah, I love it. One of my favorite books is a theology of gardening called The Fragrance of God. And and again, one of the things that he recommends is family gardening.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I mean, it just, but yeah, what you're saying about the aroma is just so beautiful. I've heard it put, we're the ones who left the garden. God didn't. God is beauty. God is truth, right?
Right.
God is good. We
Right.
left the garden. We're called back to it. So fragrance,
Yes.
yeah, and aroma. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your new book. This is really neat. I've read the Screw Tape Letters. I'm a C.S. Lewis fan. Love the Narnia Chronicles, and I understand this is a really interesting twist on Screw Tape. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's a group of around 30 letters, which is the length of Screw Tape. And instead of a male patient, in Screw Tape, the two demons are corresponding about this patient who they're trying to tempt in any way they can to separate him from the enemy, which is God. And in my book, there is a patient, but it's a female living today. So you follow this patient from she's a newlywed and a new Christian at the beginning of the book. So there's a lot of marital stuff. There's a lot of just basic Christian discipleship, Christian living themes, and you follow her all the way to middle age in the book, which is a longer period of time than Screw Tape actually. But because of that, she gets into the years of parenting. She gets into a little bit of aging and things like that. So it is a little bit of a feminine voice as well. The demon who's writing the letters, with Screw Tape, it was kind of this Oxford Dawn voice that he had. And in this, it's sort of this slightly catty female demon writing to a demon named Hemlock. So
I absolutely love it. It's so cool because if you think it through, sin permeates everything. It permeates our DNA and it permeates our gender, distinction. So there's going to be temptations specific to women that men don't necessarily wrestle with. Obviously, there's common temptation, but this is really neat. This is because I never even thought about it, but Screw Tape is going to be male specific, and this is a really nice compliment to that.
Yeah, and I would never say I love Screw Tape. Obviously, I would never have copied him if I didn't love him. But I think Screw Tape is great for anyone at any time. So I would never say this is the girl version to your male Screw Tape.
Right.
But there were some things about living as a Christian woman married to a normal Christian man in a normal church that I wanted to write about, and the sort of fictionalizing of these things through the form of these letters just made it really, really easy to write about those things and get more illustration in than I would have been able to do with a straight prose piece. So I found it to be a really useful device, and I enjoyed it.
And to help cultivate piety.
That's right. Yes, there is a chapter about gardening in the book, actually.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
What do you know? Demons hate gardening.
Yes, of course
I think it's
do.
a dangerous practice.
They ruined it. That's right.
Yeah.
They ruined it. Yeah. No, absolutely. It just I love stories in terms of the way they awaken the moral imagination and help, just bring the whole soul together. Our logos, ethos, pathos, our intellectual, moral, aesthetic sentiments. That's just what I absolutely love. So that's absolutely wonderful, wonderful stuff, gang. If you do want to get this book, you could just click on the link below. And I highly recommend it. Tilly is a wonderful author. And I think, again, this is something that's going to awaken the moral imagination and foster that piety that is the heart of the health of all of our institutional structures. There is a cultural reawakening happening. It's beautiful. Canon Press that published the book is very much part of that. And I think this book, My Dear Hemlock, will be a wonderful addition to not just your bookshelves, but to the reawakening of a classical Christian culture as well. Tilly, thank you so much for being with us. Come on back again. I know you write quite a bit, so the next time you have a book out, please come and visit us again.
That'd be fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Gang, as you know, we look out for each other on this channel. Your safety and your security are our #1 priority. So if you haven't secured the deed to your home as of yet, you need to click on that link below right now and protect yourself and your loved ones. I was absolutely shocked when I found out how easy it is to access the deed to my house, and not just access it, but actually change it. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. But the problem is that all our deeds are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new homeowner, take out tons of loans using your home's equity, and then they stick you with all the debt. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. Gang, they're simply amazing. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely and completely protected 24/7. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code TurleyTalks. Then all you got to do is enter your address for your no obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. It's a $100 value, absolutely totally free with my promo code TurleyTalks. Gang, don't wait for the worst to happen only to regret you didn't do something about it when you could have. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below right now and secure your home today.